I've got a question for really either of you, but particularly for Sanjay. Do you have any recommendations for what libraries should be doing to make things more accessible and safer for disabled patrons?
That's a tough one. Well, I think ensuring that whatever electronic information you have can be accessible for them. Making sure you have some ways of, some options for them to access what's on the computer, maybe having information on different accessibility options, because what typically would happen is that people have very distinct access needs, electronic access needs, that they have to bring with them whatever gadgets, devices that they have. So making some ways to have that information, that accessibility options be available to them might be the simplest way of doing it.
Keep going.
Jump in.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
You know what I would love to see? I would love to see at every library having a gigantic poster somewhere that shows about all the different options for engaging in terms of books, that shows KNFB Reader, that shows ways of holding books up or pages up or adapted writing things. That has a variety in terms of the armrests. What's happening in Wyoming, they have a kit for librarians. It's the Assistive Technology Kit. And it's this bin, and it has an assortment of all these different items. Then there's a poster of all this, and people can go up to the reference desk, whatever, saying, geez, can I use one of those? Can I use one of those? And then, and in New Hampshire, we just give it. We make so many of these, but to have it, just to give it to people, and then we report it to the federal government as another device that was made and given out. So, but that's New Hampshire. But you know, I don't know what state are you from? Okay, every state, there's a Oak Hill or Oak School or something with Oak. Okay, Oak Hill. So Oak Hill is one of the state assistive technology programs, and you should go to your state assistive technology program, say you attended this event, and as a librarian and a library resources, you want an assortment of these different devices for reading. You want the KNFB Reader app because it's so fast and so accurate to be able to have that. The other part is we're loaning out iPads that have an assortment of apps so people can say, here, why don't you take this iPad with the KNF, and here's a scan and read station for you. And so then they can, as long as they've got the earbuds, they can scan it and read it. Have all access. Give people immediate access to all of that.
Could you just say that app more clearly? The letter KNFB?
Yeah, Reader. It is a phenomenal app. It's a game changer.
Yeah, and just having a basic suite of accessibility apps or accessibility measures that they can look up and choose what might work for them, because like I said, every individual has different accessibility needs. So even if you set up a workstation, you know, in a specific way, it may not work for them. So just being able to pick and choose from a suite of accessibility devices and apps might help.
I thought you were going to say, because you were like nodding about the thing, yeah, if you want one, I'll give you one of those. You can use it on your seatbelt, yeah.
Other questions? Hi, thank you guys for this great presentation. So I have two questions and they're totally different. So I'll start with a really easy, straightforward one. And it was to the first speaker. I'm sorry, I forget your name. I have an uncle who is a double amputee. And so I noticed those exoskeletons were really on folks that still had their legs. And I wondered if there was any technology that was coming that would be a complete, you know, just a new set of legs kind of thing.
There are a lot of myoelectric prostheses. Did you mean like new types of prostheses?
I hadn't seen the exoskeleton at all before, and I guess I'm just curious if, like, where that is headed, and if it would be a technology that would be available to people that were either single or double amputees.
I don't know if that works for amputees. It's basically for people who have mostly spinal cord injuries, and how that works is it has a battery pack and mechanical actuators that are really being triggered by some initiated movements, and that's supporting those movements. I can see that being attached to a prosthetic limb sometime in the future. I'm not sure if they're thinking of it from that perspective.
Yeah.
You know, connecting that totally to a prosthetic limb. But I know that myoelectric prosthesis has been around for a long time. Kind of works on the same concept, where it's picking up the signals from the residual limb and then initiating those movements. I know in the upper extremity it works really well. And then the lower extremity, there are a lot of titanium-based lightweight prostheses that may also help without the high-tech bionic type approach. So, yeah, I mean, I don't have a very prescriptive answer for you, but who knows, the bionic system may work to take on a prosthetic approach too in the future. So it's not there right now.
I wanted to mention that Mobis, too. Come fall, they've redesigned the chair that goes up onto two wheels that will climb stairs. And Mobis, that's the product. This product was invented by Dean Kamen.
I actually worked at DECA for a while.
You did? Oh, wow. So you know about the resurgence.
Yeah, and the Luke arm, right? They got that. Yep.
Cool.
So
Awesome.
some of this stuff is really difficult. He's on Medicare, Medicaid. And so sometimes, I think it took him 2 years to get his first, we called it his electric chair because my family's got a sick sense of humor. But, that process, I think, is also difficult, right? The technology is here, but then the ability to make it financially accessible to people. But yeah, I think this kind of movement, the exoskeleton and everything, right? It's bringing folks with mobility issues at the same height, right? I mean, so you're in a wheelchair and you're mobile, but everybody has to talk down to you, or you can't reach things. So yeah, I love that this is going that way. But the exoskeleton thing just blew my mind. I had no idea that we were even near that kind of stuff yet. My follow-up question, or my second question, totally different for you. So I do a little patent and trademark stuff. Paulina and I both do this, and so I'm looking at all these things that you've come up with, and I wondered if you or the university were patenting any of that.
Well, here's the funny thing. So the university, I'm the first person at the UNH to have a patent on the iPad stand. And so UNH has a fabulous Office of Intellectual Property, and they did that. And then I filled out 30 more applications for patents for the whole thing of intellectual, search and all of that. But you know what? Is that I thought it was good to get a patent, and then I found out it's awful to have a patent. Because once you have a patent, you're not allowed to teach people how to make it. Because what happens, yes, so we do these workshops where we teach people when you get a patent, you are supposed to protect your patent. So you're not supposed to give trade secrets. So they can go ahead and do it, but how do you protect your patent so people don't manufacture it?
It sounds like that was advice from the university. Inventors all the time make their stuff freely available, license it out. If you are the inventor and the assignee, then you have full control. If the University of New Hampshire is the assignee,
right. Yes.
and you're the inventor, then you have given up. So just so the audience knows, that's
good.
That's not a thing that applies just to inventions. You can patent it and share it. And if you think about it, once you've been granted a patent, that becomes public knowledge. Someone could go look up your granted patent online and see everything about it. and figure it out for themselves, maybe, possibly. So, so to some degree, some of the advice sounds like it might be coming from the university and a protection of intellectual property. And that makes sense in general for a university to do so.
You know, the other is that gripper loop. The seatbelts, we all struggle, not we all, a lot of us struggle with the whole seatbelt issue. And I brought that to the patent office or to the UNH Innovation, and they declined to pursue it any further. Yeah.
So it might have been too obvious of a thing.
Okay.
And also, universities tend to like to invest time and energy in money-making ventures.
Okay.
And that might have just not been a thing they saw as potential.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I'm just kind of curious, how do you get some of your ideas out there? I'm because it's funny because we had a family member who had gotten into a car accident and was in an issue like that, and we couldn't afford a lot of these things, so we started jury-rigging them too. How do you get more of those ideas out? Because I know other people who are in the same situation to get some of those ideas out, because I remember her arm would slip off. And is it in the books, or is it on YouTube, or do you have a blog, or?
So I have a couple of books on creating solutions in minutes and how to, right? So it has that, but there is Instructables with assistive technology. There are Pinterest boards with assistive technology. There is DIY assistive technology. So there's a lot of resources out there, how to make devices for people with disabilities. And then every year there is a National Assistive Technology Makers Fair. Last year it was held here in New Hampshire. This coming year in September, it's being held in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then 2020 is in Georgia. So that's another way people can go and learn in terms of making devices. Oh, and you might want to write this down. It's called ATINNH YouTube channel. That's my YouTube channel. If you subscribe to it, every time I post a new video, you'll get an email that says, hey, Therese just put up a new video. So my new book is going to have QR codes for we're 600 videos, how-to videos. So it's kind of a recipe book. It says, here's the tools, materials, and then you scan the QR code, and there's a how-to YouTube video on it.
Your books, are they for sale at the bookstore?
Are they for sale at what bookstore?
This bookstore here.
Yes, because it's a required textbook for our students. So it's at this bookstore, and then the Institute on Disability at West Edge also has their bookstore, and they sell all these books that are related to disabilities.
And I'll invite you, and anybody else who's doing inventing, to reach out to one of the Patent and Trademark Resource Center librarians, because we can do a presentation on that division. The whole idea of patents back in 1790 with Thomas Jefferson and George Washington was to share the intellectual property, to motivate people who had an idea to put it down on paper, give them a protected period and control over what happened to it, but document it. And that is, in my opinion, and I think a few other people's opinion, the jet fuel for American invention starting back then, because other systems were all about having it in the control of the monarchy. So there's more information for you.
Oh, thank you. I want to learn more. There's somebody back there.
To shift modes a little bit, a question for both of you. Sajay, you said as how the assistive technology, folks who do that, come from all kinds of backgrounds and come at it from all these different points of view. I was wondering if either of you noticed something about how particular fields are trained that give them a similarity of perspective. So like your occupational therapist will approach assistive technology in a way that is distinct from another field. Is that something you notice, or is it just once someone gets caught up in working with assistive technology, you're kind of all on the same page?
I think you're right. You're mostly right. I mean, depending on your background and your flavor and some of the clientele that you work with, you kind of drift into different specialities within all the assistive technology categories like I was mentioning. Like, for example, a lot of the mobility seating assistive technology is done by physical therapists and occupational therapists because they naturally kind of fit with those clientele, whereas special education teachers may have more expertise with learning, cognitive, education-based technology. But that's not to say that once you kind of get into that tangent, you can't break free and go into other areas. Being involved with the National Association, like Arthanat, the Rehabilitation Engineering Society, being there, you kind of go and explore what other professionals are doing, and you can become a generalist, if you will. There are a lot of professional development workshops, certifications that you can get, so you can sort of dabble into other areas as well. But you sometimes tend to get naturally inclined to a certain type of assistive technology just based on who you are serving. So
The University of New Hampshire offers a graduate certificate in assistive technology, and we've had several librarians graduate with that 15-credit graduate certificate in assistive technology. And it's a very interdisciplinary program. It takes about a year to complete. It's been in existence since 1998. We've had over 280 individuals graduate with their graduate certificate in AT. You just have to have a bachelor's degree in anything. And so it's a nice, and we've got engineers, musicians, librarians, psychologists, physical therapists, speech therapists, teachers, educators, physical education teachers. So it's just a very diverse group.
Wonderful, thank you.
Beyond standard Medicare and Medicaid potential for individuals, what are the options generally available for individuals or families to fund the more expensive end of assistive technologies? Can you address that?
So people have become creative. They've sought out personal loans sometimes. Like I said, there are zero interest loans. Sometimes the state would provide. Medicare, Medicaid, it's not a one-time request that you make sometimes. Sometimes you got to be persistent. If you do have a medical necessity, then it's how you justify that necessity and how you keep going after them and maybe appealing to them to kind of give them that clarification. So in many cases, it might take 2-3 appeals to get a device funded, as long as you know that there is a medical criteria that this person fits into. First of all, is this the device that you're seeking under a certain Medicare, Medicaid code, right? Reimbursement code. And if it is, and the person fits that criteria for medical necessity, then it's really up to the therapist to make a strong justification. So I would stick with Medicare as much as I can to make sure it gets funded. And if then I would look for various other options like personal loans. And I've heard stories of people raising funds through their Facebook page and all that if they cannot afford it for real, on their own, right? So it's like health insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, and then all the other miscellaneous options that you can somehow muster and
So 80% of assistive technology is not considered medically necessary, and insurance will not pay for it. And your health insurance won't pay for it, Medicaid won't pay for it, Medicare won't pay for it. So the next level is called waivers. And these are waivers for non-medically necessary items that will maintain people in their homes. Every state has a variety of waivers. There's several waivers in the state of New Hampshire for the elderly to pay for assistive technology to maximize independence at home. There's the DD waiver that pays for assistive technology, home modifications, ramps, grab bars, because grab bars are not considered medically necessary and not funded by insurance. Then, after we exhaust the waivers, the next level we go to is the office, if it's related to work and employment, the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation pays for a lot of assistive technology that would enable that person to pursue substantial gainful employment. Then the next level is under IDEA with the Department of Education. If it is written into a plan that that person needs that assistive technology to achieve an educational goal, then the school districts will pay for the assistive technology. Again, we're talking about all the stuff that insurance will not pay for. Then underneath that, there is the GoFundMe pages. People set up GoFundMe. There's the church groups. Just about every state, there's 32 states that have an assistive technology loan program that provides low-interest loans for assistive technology devices. For example, hearing aids. In many states, hearing aids are not covered by your insurance. So these low-interest loans are tapped into. And then like vans are really expensive, modified vans. If vocational rehabilitation doesn't pay for it, people will do some fundraising activities. And then there's the CAP programs for seniors to keep seniors at home versus a nursing home and on Medicaid. CAP. Just check out your senior programs. In New Hampshire, we have something that's called Service Links. And then our alternative loan program is we provide, last year we fabricated over 1,200 devices and gave them to individuals. But these devices are like under $100, so they're not your high end that you were referring to.
Basically, every one of these non-medical funding entities have their own agenda, like for example, the work rehab, right? If you can justify the device is what it takes for somebody to be on the job. IDEA, it's for education. So there has to be a direct correspondence. If Medicare doesn't fund it, where is this device going to be used? What's the context? What's the purpose? Does that fit with that funding entity's agenda or mission? Otherwise, they will not entertain that. So, but yeah, it's good to know there are a lot of these Plan Bs and Plan Cs.
Thank you so much, Sajay and Therese. We are just a little bit over time, so one last round of applause for our speakers today.